Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April call of Entrepreneur Leader Circle. It's great to have all of you guys here, and we got a very special guest, Paul Dunn. We're both in Singapore, but different places in Singapore, and it's always great to connect with Paul at our events. And he's been really kind to join us on this call for the leaders. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Suraj, great to see you. And thank you, as you were just saying, thank you to all the people from right around. It always amazes me that, people from right around the world can just hang out with us literally. And wherever it is you are, I'm just thrilled that you were able to take time to do that.
That's wonderful. So, Paul, we've been talking a lot about different topics over the last 3 months on the Leader Circle. So we started with the first one was your flow. That was the first call we did, and it goes through the different micro degrees on Genius U. The second one was your passion, and then the third one we did with Michelle was your genius, and this one is more on the purpose side, and there's no one I could think of better than you who could come on this call and just talk to us about purpose and how it's having it's such a buzzword right now. Like everyone is getting onto it and they're finding the importance of it, and I'd like to talk to you more about it on how all our leaders can use the purpose and even the micro degree, take the learnings from there and incorporate that in their business and how they can grow that side of things. So before I get into the questions and all of that, I'd love to know how you got started in your story. I know there's some leaders who would know, and we've got some mentors joining in as well. They know as well, but it would be wonderful to hear the story of B1G1 and yourself.
Well, one of the things, of course, about my story is that my story is a little longer than most people, right? Because age thing. So let me try and shorten the story, and let me reference back to something Roger said, years ago, which was that where we are right now in our life is really a series of critical moments, and it's how we react to those critical moments that determines where we go. So just remember that for the minute, and then remember something else which I saw. I can't remember where I saw it, and it said this: when you lose your why, meaning your purpose, right? When you lose your why, you lose your way. So if you are feeling, oh gosh, I've lost my way right now, it might be because you've lost your why. So let's try and bring those two things together. So first of all, my story in relation to B1G1 was really began in Bangalore. I was at a program, and someone asked me to go to dinner with somebody that I'd never met before. It turned out to be a guy called Pastor Selva, and he had had some interesting challenges through the tsunami. I'm not going to go through the story on that now because we'd all be shedding tears. But suffice it to say, that was the first time. Now, this is a really important distinction because that was the first time that I really got this whole thing around connection. Because if you'd have said to me at that particular point in time, okay, so what is it that creates success and all of that sort of stuff, I would have said, well, the two things for me
Mhm,
are adding enormous value to people and having fun doing it. But
mhm,
as a result of that particular interaction, I realized there was something else. So it was having fun, it was adding enormous value, and it was realizing that we had an obligation to make a difference. And putting those three, it's kind of like Branson, actually. If you talk with Branson about Branson's purpose, right? You go back 9 years ago, and he will say. By the way, it's kind of weird for me to say it's kind of like the idea is like Branson. It's not that I'm like Branson. Anyway, so Branson said, 9, 10 years ago, he was very clear about what he was here to do. And he would have said, well, I'm here to disrupt industries that need disrupting
mhm,
and to have fun doing it. Now, or more recently, let's say 9 years ago, he flipped that. So those two things still become the core, notably disrupt or become part of it. Disrupt, have fun. And then the third one is, and each and every moment of my life make a difference in what I'm doing. And that was when he kind of fronted or did the whole thing around Virgin Unite and so on. So the most interesting thing I think about those two stories is that once you get on purpose, and by the way, a good place to have a look at this in another way is look at Roger's thing that he did on purpose just last week, where he talked about Sydney Opera House, and the tree and everything else. It's interesting. So the point about that is that when you get in, on the whole thing, you get it together, then it's kind of, as in the purpose thing, it's kind of like it impacts you at your very core. And in some weird way, it kind of changes the circulation of the blood almost, right? It's like you got new blood and it sort of transforms. And as a result, you're pumping new blood, which in a weird way is kind of getting outside of you and it's connecting others to that.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result of that, and many people on this call would know that if you've ever bought a new car, you're driving off in this new car, and then all of a sudden you see that every third car coming towards you is the same car that you just bought. You just never noticed them before, right? So it's always there. So that was when other things started coming into my world because of that change of purpose. And that happened to be, of course, when I met Masami Sato.
Yeah.
And then as a result of that, of course, she had this amazing idea that wouldn't it be an amazing world if every time business transacted, every time there was a transaction somewhere, if at that point something amazing happened in our world as well. And that's really where B1G1 is right now, so that everybody who's in B1G1 and contributing to the, 143 million impacts
Wow.
that we've made today. Or we, the people who are part of the movement, it's because impact is right at the center. That's the key, right at the center of every transaction, which is another way of saying purpose is right at the center of, or the articulation of, or the expression of our purpose is right at the center of every transaction. So what that means is we're on purpose literally every second, every day and every way. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so interesting, and thanks for sharing that story. I didn't know the first half of the story. That's the first time I'm hearing it.
Oh, the Bangalore story. Oh, you and I have got to share that, but we'll need a box of tissues when we do.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. And now I see that everyone's joining in. We've got quite a lot of people. I'll just show you one quick logistical bit here as well. If you guys can see my screen. So this is the post where everyone's commenting where they're from. We've got Marinda from South Africa, Deb from Brisbane, Australia, Julie here as well. We've got Veronique from Belgium. And the other thing which I would like to mention is in the last 15 to 20 minutes of this call, we're going to cover some of the questions that are coming.
Got it.
Here. And
I noticed that Deb Harris, who I just sent an email to, actually, or we just sent an email to, is listening in her car. I hope you're not watching in your car as well.
Yeah. So here's the document where you can post in your questions. I can see this was blank just about 10 minutes back, so everyone's just gone in and adding all their questions. So that's great to see. And I'm just gonna. So that's a quick logistical bit I wanted to share. And I'm going back to Paul on to the content side. So you shared about the idea of getting on that purposeful journey. I've heard many times, like you should have that coming really from the core side.
Yeah.
How would a person find their purpose or find their big why? Is it something which angers them about something that I need to solve this, or how do you find your big why if you haven't found that yet? Because there's a lot of different things that you do care about. How would you do that?
Well, of course, one way is to start with figuring out what's important, and the purpose test, I guess, kind of helps you with that. Although I'm not, there are probably other ways of doing that, but let's just go with that for the moment. And then the other thing people say is, oh, well, you get a whiteboard and you just write a few things down. The other things people say is, you just keep saying things, and then as you say it, you just ask, or someone asks you why, until you get, right back to the core of it. But some of the people, Deb, for example, would know that I've got a very simple way of getting people to do that. In fact, that they can actually do this physically on the call right now. It's very simple. Now, you know that I'm an Apple fanboy. So, you need one of these. Well, actually, it works on the other thing as well, right? It's just that I don't know how to do it on the other thing. But here I know how to do it. So what I do is I say, hey, Siri, open voice recorder. Right? Let me just get it to the point. Right? So I say, hey, Siri, open voice recorder. And dutifully, Siri opens voice recorder, sometimes called voice memo. So, you can do this. Literally, you can do this. And it's really interesting. And what you do, now notice there's no writing down here, and you'll see why that's important in a minute. And you just press the record button, and then you say this: I get up every morning to, and you complete the sentence, right? Now, the first time you do it, it's like, I get up every morning to, oh my God, I wish I hadn't pushed the button because I'm not really clear, all of that sort of thing. Or, oh gosh. And anyway, it gets really interesting. Now, sometimes, yesterday, for example, I was at iLab in Bali, and there were 15 people on the group there. And 14 of them were like, I get up every morning, oh God, why did I push the button? One of them nailed it. Right? Now, and that's a really tough exercise, right? Because the chance of you getting it right off the bat are pretty small. But the beautiful thing is you can do it once and go, that was rubbish, right? That wouldn't inspire anyone. And then you just do it again. I get up every morning to jump. Now, there are some real clues to how you do that. And some of those clues come back from, first of all, let me go back one. So why are we not writing it down? Why am I saying do it here? Here's the reason. Paul's law 3001 sort of thing. It's this. When we write stuff down, my observation is that's not actually who we are, right? Because we will start using words that we don't normally use. My purpose is to empower, all of those kind of things. But when you're doing it here, you get this lovely kind of free flow thing. Now, so a couple of things. Frequently women seem to get this, right? And women will say things like, for example, I get up every morning to be a great example for my children. Sounds like a good purpose, but if someone said that and I was being really hard on them, I would say, good for you, right? Because at that moment, it's all about you, which is kind of paradoxical because you think, oh, purpose should be about me. But no, purpose is bigger than you. Now, what I mean by that is just take that simple thing. I get up every morning to inspire my kids, okay? What if we just use 2 words, and the 2 words are so that? Now we go, I get up every morning to be a great example for my children, and then you just go, so that, and just keep talking, right? So that they can inspire the kids that they hang out with every day. And maybe that way we can make a greater difference to our community and hence to our world. All of a sudden, see, here's the thing. When you say that, and there's only 2 words there, Siraj, and 2 words are so that, right? When you say that, you get it off yourself and you get it kind of out here. And now the difference is this. If you said, I get up every morning to inspire, to be a great example for my children, I'm going to say, good for you. But then if you say, I get up every morning to inspire, be a great example for my children, so that, whatever the so that is, in this case, they can inspire, other kids around them, and we can make a difference or a bigger dent in our world. When you say that to me in a casual conversation or something like at a networking event or something like that, you say that second one to me, I'm going to say, wow, I'd love to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the key, okay? Or at least one of the keys.
Yeah.
Because now what you're doing is it's kind of like you've created this magnetic effect around you, and that now applies whether you're talking to future team members, whether you're talking to future investors, whether you're talking to future partners or future future clients, right? So it's just something that's become bigger than you. And does that make sense?
That makes total sense, and I think that is such gold knowledge that you've given. It's such, if you go onto Google and look for, there's so many people searching for this, like how do I find my why, right? And you see this entire generation getting onto finding the purpose, and you've seen the growth of like some of the books from Simon Sinek and find your why, start with your why, and those have gone so big. This little trick that you mentioned is so awesome, and I think if I was to make this small clipping and just share with people, this would just go viral.
Well, let's hope so. By the way, there's some other interesting things about doing that, right? Let's suppose you do 4 of them and you go, they're rubbish, right? What you could then do is go, okay, I'm going to find it. You know, so you tense up and you're talking to the side all day. I get up every morning, and you that's not a good idea, right? Just let it go. And people with whom that I mentor and so on, they tell me it pops. It just kind of comes. But sometimes, Suraj, people get stuck on it, right? Because they think. Now, remember what I said about Branson and things change. Remember what I said about me and things change. Right? So sometimes when people are saying, "Oh, I need to find my purpose," it's kind of like they're thinking that we ask them to define kind of what would people say when they die. You know, when they're putting them in the ground, what do people do? You know, what was my legacy? Well, Paul got up every week, that kind of thing. And the problem with that is it just sounds so big that it's very difficult sometimes for us to articulate it. Example, but I'm going to give you 2 words. Remember these 2 words, so that, but I'm going to give you 2 more, which are really going to help everybody on this call. So let me give you, first of all, an example. Here's a person I was mentoring. This guy's Paul, still am. His name is Paul Jackson. Paul's 58 years old. He's an accountant in Gatwick, in the United Kingdom. And I said to him, the mentoring homework, we just do this, okay, and send me the MP3. The MP3 comes back. The first one says, I get up every morning because I've always done it that way. So I email back and say, more work required, right? So then I get version 2. Version 2 says, I get up every morning because I have to. What is this? So at this moment we connect, because obviously he's lost, right? And this just came like this, and I said, okay, Paul, let's do this. Let's just put 2 words. And so anyone who's listening to us now who's got this struggle because it's kind of like big, okay, all you need is 2 words, and they're 3-letter words. They're very simple, and the words are for now. Okay, so now it becomes, for now, I get up every morning to. Does that make sense? And so in effect, you're cutting the thing down, and you're accepting that it's going to change anyway. And in Paul's case, this 58-year-old accountant, he goes, "Oh my God, for now, I boom, 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 boom," and it was beautiful to the extent that, now there's an important thing here, to the extent that as he said it, it was like, wow. And remember, now this is a 58-year-old accountant. Just get the word accountant here. So he finishes the sentence and he goes, boom. That's exactly how he went. And and I said, my God, what just happened? And this is a very interesting comment that he made. He said, you know what? That was amazing, because what I realized is that it was always inside me. Right? All it needed was just a couple of different words to get it outside of me. Does that make sense? So,
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome, Paul. I'm just gonna change gears slightly and get on to the fact that how many of our leaders who are on the call, how they can start measuring. Say they've got their purpose, right? They know what they want to do. How would they measure or compare impact versus income. So you've got your quarterly board meet, and you're talking about how many impacts you made rather than how much money you made, right?
Yeah.
So the importance of impact versus income, and how a purpose-driven companies doing a lot better compared
Mm, 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 mm. Well, it's a great point. By the way, the question, the other question is, how do you, if you've got a company, you've got people who connect with you. Interesting question is, how do you measure your purpose? You just say to your team, by the way, team, what are we here for, right? And they've got to be able to articulate that, right? Now, that doesn't mean that that's their purpose necessarily, but that's like, you've got it in relation to the organization. And so what then happens is everybody is literally moving in the same way. Now, in terms of this whole thing, if we were having this conversation 2 years ago,
Mhm.
I would have said to you that various gurus, people like Seth Godin and people like that, are saying we're in the age of connection, right? So this is all about connection. It doesn't mean having multiple Twitter accounts. It means, getting connected to yourself, getting connected to your team members, getting connected to your customers, and so on, then getting connected to the wider world. There's a lot of stuff now, Suraj, and you kind of identified it right up front, which is it's a different age now. And the word I'm hearing a lot is that we're now in the age of meaning. Right? So that gets back to this whole thing that you started out with. So and then in our case, of course, it's very simple for us to measure the impact of that because that's what we do, right? Here in B1G1. Now, you might say, well, but how would a general company do that? What sort of measurements are they? And there's an important link here. And the link is that, and this is not meant to be, some kind of ad, if you like, for people. It's not for people doing. But here's the link. There's a distinction between you expressing it and you actually doing it. Does that make sense? So, for example, let's say you did the purpose test, and let's say that you found that life on land was, life below the sea or whatever, poverty or whatever it was, it came out as one of your based on the 17 global goals. The question is, what is the impact now? Is what are you doing towards that, right? That's really simple, right? And now, because in B1G1, B1G1 is always linked into the global goals. So, for example, I could go up. Let me just share my screen with you, and you'll see exactly what I mean. So if I just flip down here for a second, and by the way, I want to also share with you something else about this as well. So as you know, Suraj, I would normally be with you on Zoom. So forgive my novice status here on Google Hangout because I find it much harder than Zoom. But anyway, so I'm going to say screen share, and it's going to ask me which application window do I want to share, and I think I say this one. So let's see. So you should see a bunch of people, hitting their hands. Is that what you got? Okay. Now, with some luck, if I press play, you should see it full screen. Can you just confirm that you are seeing it full screen?
No, I still see that.
You still see the little one. Okay, don't worry. I know how to fix that, right? So I'm just going to stop sharing, and we should do a thing on how to use Google Hangout, shouldn't we? So let me do it this way. So we're going to see Suraj first. Okay, we're going to see you. Now you're going to see that people hitting their hands. Is that right?
Something's coming up now. Yeah, I can see that, but I still see the slides. So you might want to stop.
Oh, yeah. But now, now you should see it full screen.
Oh, yeah, I see full screen now.
Okay. So here's a guy. This guy, his name is James McGregor, and you can see James company there, bluetribe.co. Happens to be in Newcastle,
Yep.
just north of Sydney. And what's interesting is he does what B1G1 members do, and that is, you see here on his website, he has a tab called Impact, which is kind of interesting, right? And we find, by the way, that people click this, right? So if we click his Impact thing, we will see something very interesting, which gets to the heart of your question. So let's just click this, and we see a bit more about his site. Then let's go and zoom in now. This is his Impact page, okay? So every time someone does business with us, something great happens. We see his why right there, okay? That's interesting. Then we see his impacts, and because he's B1G1, we're tracking those impacts right across the world. But now look at this. Look at this.
That is so cool. So he's measuring it based on the SDGs.
Exactly.
That's brilliant.
Is that cool?
That's just brilliant.
Hey, I thought you'd like that.
Yeah. Totally. So there are many other companies who are doing similar things with you, right, on the B1G1 side.
Yeah.
How has this impacted their income? Have they highlighted on that as well, like because they're women?
Oh, well, you see, you mentioned Simon Sinek a little while ago, right?
Yeah.
So, and I don't know that you would see this in any of Simon's writings, but this was in a sort of one-to-one conversation that we had, and he said this, right? And perhaps people would want to take note of it.
Yeah.
Which is this. Differentiation, and we need to differentiate ourselves, right? Now, remember the little comment about sometimes we lose our way because we lose our why. Just remember that, right? Simon puts it this way. He says differentiation comes from clarity of why. Okay?
Yeah.
For the purposes of this call, we could say differentiation comes from clarity of purpose. Right? And then the off-quoted thing that Simon would say is this, and you know them as well as I do. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do what you do. Or people don't buy what you do, they buy what you believe in. What you believe in is the articulation of that's another way of saying your purpose. Now, we already saw that when I express it in a particular way, and I put the "so that" in there, we already saw that increases the connection, because people go, "Wow, I'd love to be a part of this," right? If that makes sense. So then the question is, how can we kind of refine that? And again, talking from Simon, with Simon, he says this. He says, your why, for the purpose of this call, let's say he said your purpose, because they're one and the same thing. Your purpose must be front and center. Okay. So get how that plays out. So let's say you're having, now, when I first heard that, I thought, oh, he means let's make sure we've got it on our business card. Let's make sure we've got it on our website. By the way, most people joining us now, many people joining us, have a look at your website, and it's probably got what. It's talking about what we do, as opposed to why we do it. And yet we know that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, right? So anyway, playing with that idea, let's say I was having a conversation. Let's say we didn't know each other.
Yeah.
And let's say that I was having a meeting with you, right? And on account of how you'd express something. I mean, maybe it doesn't matter what I'm doing, but we have this conversation. We now meet face to face.
Yeah.
And I articulate, Siraj, I was thinking about this, and there are four things that I think we might want to do today to make sure we're on purpose. First thing, to make sure we're on track. If it's okay with you, by the way, people joining us now should take a note of this, because it's perfect. So, well, I shouldn't say it's perfect. A lot of people use this now. So it is. So Suraj, if it's okay with you, that's to keep us on track. What I'd love to do is there's four things here. Firstly, I'd love to get your answers to some really important questions, which means that in the first 10, 15 minutes, I'm going to be spending a lot of time listening and I'm going to be taking notes, if that's okay with you. You say, yeah, that's fine. Then once we've done that, point number two, I'm going to make some suggestions to you as to how we can kind of improve or fix some of those things you've raised. Point number three, I'm going to get your reaction to those suggestions. And then point number four, based on all of that, together we're going to plan the next steps forward. How's that sound? Everybody said, that sounds really great. So but what we're finding now is people say, well, that's great, Samaj, but before we do that, could I do something might be a little unusual and get your reaction to it? Well, sure. What I'd love to do just before we start is to tell you and explain why we do what we do at XYZ company and get your reaction to that. Yeah, it's really cool. Now, this sounds interesting. This sounds like it's really weird, but stay with it. So you nail the why. So thank you, Suraj. So here's why we get up every morning. That, right? Yeah. So let's say in Genius U case or Roger's case, it might have something to do with education or whatever it was, right? And so you nail it, and then you say to the person, so how do you feel about that, right? Like, because I was saying I'd ask you a reaction to it. And so there are two possible answers to that. The first one, now this seems really tough, right? The first one is where the person said, well, not maybe the first one, but a reaction is where the person says, oh yeah, that's really cool, right? Or maybe not, it's really good. Oh yeah, okay, that's kind of nice, right? And the second reaction is, oh, wow, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Now, let's suppose you get the first reaction. If you're really being authentic, right, you would say, oh, I see. Well, maybe I should introduce another company to you because clearly we're not on track, right? Just from that alone, right? So it takes a lot of guts to do that, but it's really valuable.
Yeah, I think that is such a key of building, not just getting more clients, but building teams as well. When you're hiring someone on board, building your team. If you're sharing your vision, and we've noticed that in our team itself, we've got team members who've been here for 6, 7, 8 years and long as well, because we all share the same purpose. We've got the same vision of driving the entrepreneur movement, enabling entrepreneurs to become leaders and bringing in change. And each team member feels that way. And it's because we bring that first thing when we get someone on board.
By the way, once you've got it, right? I mean, what you're doing is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Because once you've got it, you know you're checking back on your values the whole time. So when you're making decisions, so then you go, oh, so this is what we do. So would a company called Genius U make sense? Yes, because it fits the purpose. Would a company like Entrepreneur Results make it? Yes, because it fits the purpose, right?
Yeah.
So you see what I mean? So it's that expansion that we talked about before. And you're going to find people like you who, because of that purpose, go, wow, I want to be a part of that.
Exactly. And we've attracted such talents because of that as well, who've been working in big corporations, but they didn't have that one thing, which was being aligned to what they wanted to do. And it makes such a big difference. And that's why you got to keep sharing your purpose all the time, because once you share, it becomes from one person to two person. It becomes like a bigger thing by itself.
And the purpose, by the way, I mean, we mustn't confuse purpose with, taglines and stuff like that. But because they're different. But sometimes you can. For example, if you look at Branson's stated purpose now, it's really cool. His purpose, and his purpose is, effectively, I get up every morning to change business for good. That's really cool, right? Now, have a look at why that's cool. Because you talked about the people that you're attracting from corporate, and we know, you know it, that people in corporate, many of them, not all, but many of them are going, at the end of the day, is that all there is? Is that seriously all there is? Right. So what are they looking for? That's called I've lost my way because I've lost my why. So then they hear, this kind of thing you say, and they go, wow, I want to be a part of this. And it's not because of what they're doing. It's because we believe in what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I share this story, because I'm in Singapore, I'm right in the midst of these buildings out here, which are all corporate centers, financial hubs, right? So, and I meet a lot of people who are in their, say, late 30s and early 40s as well. And they're like, hey, I'm just not fitting into it. Like I want to get out of it, start something of my own, find something which is really meaningful. So there is such a need for this, and what you shared today is brilliant. What I want to do is like take this for some of the leaders who they can bring it to their team members, maybe the younger lot, right? Who are in their 20s or their kids as well, right? How would you bring purpose to the center stage, the big why to the center stage for someone who's like a 24-year-old startup entrepreneur who just wants to go in and get, say, investors putting in the money into the company and just gonna go big, but there isn't much of the impact on it. It's just thinking from the income side of it.
Well, yeah, and well, that's what we think. Okay, the reality is, if you look, let's just talk investment for the moment, right? And if you look at so-called impact investment, where people are getting smart about the companies they're investing in. Someone we were working with in New Zealand who keeps stats on this, who actually is a venture capitalist, said to me in December in 2017, he said, Paul, you may not realize it, but there's been a 734% increase in the last 3 years of people who are doing impact investment.
Wow.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. And you find, I mean, just recently, you see, let me just look at my thing here. I'm not going to share my screen. You'll be pleased to know. Yeah. I don't think I am. Let's put it that way. Yeah. It could end up that I share my screen, but I hope not. Is you still seeing me, by the way?
Yeah, I'm still seeing you.
Yeah. So you get people, just talking of investors and so on. You get people like, let me just find it, so like Make Sure and give you the real deal, if you like, on this. And it is this. In fact, have a look at this. Have a look at this. So let me share my screen. And you'll see who this guy is. He has an interesting surname. But let me, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go down here. Bear with me, guys. There we go. Whoops, wrong one. So we're going to go here and press screen share. Okay. And share this thing here. So you should see, you can see what I'm seeing there. Okay. So let me just blow this up. Okay. So can you see that guy?
Yeah, I do. Okay.
Like I said, interesting name. Now, question is, who is BlackRock? Right, this guy is the guy. BlackRock is the company that has the most funds under management of any financial management company in the world. Okay, so we're talking trillions of dollars here. Have a look what he said. 6 weeks ago to all of his Wall Street pals and all of that kind of thing. Have a look what he said. He said this. Oh, there we go. Just blow him up a bit there. But then here's what he said. He said, to prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society.
Yep.
That is the first time in any kind of marketplace like that a senior leader has been game enough, if you will, to come out and say it. And that absolutely rocked Wall Street when he said it. So my point to your question, which is, just let me stop the sharing there for a minute. Whoa, let me stop it there. There we go. My point to your question is, it seems to us that the 24-year-olds, as you mentioned, who are starting the company, are starting it not because the technology and everything else, but because they see a problem that can be solved.
Yeah.
And that problem is increasingly a social problem, because the kids who are 24 years old just get it. They really get it. And again, if you go back to some of Roger's gems, and one of them is this: the idea is, as you know, is not to fall in love with your product, but to fall in love with the customer who's using it. Someone else the other day said, I heard this. They said, "Don't run an ad." They said, "Don't run ads. Get a cause." So in other words, you get a purpose, right? And then people are going to flock to you, because think of this like a magnet. Think of from here on in today, right? People joining us, think of your body as a magnet. Just think of it that way for the minute. However, this magnet is an electromagnet. It's not a normal magnet, it's an electromagnet, and it only switches on when you plug it into the power. Okay. Analogously, this magnet only works when you plug it into the power of purpose.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when
you
get the attraction. So, if you look at, there was a thing yesterday actually talking about the fastest growing 200 new startups in across the US, actually across lots of things. And all of those were solving a social problem.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And we've seen the growth of impact investment as well, what you were sharing. So I'm just going to share my screen. I'm going to get onto the questions in a bit, but I'd like to share this slide and how we've been involved in a big way onto the impact. So this is the growth.
Oh, there you go.
Sustainable investing growth since 2014. It's just growing phenomenally.
Well, you put a number 7 in front of that, and you get it even bigger. So I'm not sure whose number is correct, but
Yeah, and that's just a 2016, which is good. The latest numbers we want out there, it's going to be like phenomenal. And we've seen that we've been speaking with a lot of impact investors. In fact, just before this call, we were speaking with an investment company who are looking at investing into GeniusU.
Right.
They had a very similar purpose in terms of supporting entrepreneurs, and there's such a great synergy in what we were doing and what they were doing. And they said, if you want just money, you could just go and get it from the bank. But if you want like-minded investors who can support in solving world's problems, then we are there, right? It's just makes such a big difference as well. Just going to get onto some of the questions here. We got 15 minutes to get onto it. We got all these questions coming in here. So there's a question from Adrian, which is choosing the right language that will make sense to people and achieve understanding. So that's what I think you covered a bit of that when you were talking about sitting in a cafeteria with someone and just mentioning that to your potential client as well. Would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would. In B1G1, and this is particular to B1G1, but I think everybody will get the broader implication of this. One of the things that you have to be really careful with the language. So let's say, for example, you have some social aim, whatever it is, and typically when you have that social aim, it gets associated with charity. Okay. And the problem then becomes that we know that depending on which research you read, it's as much as 70% of people have had a bad experience with that, right? And so the moment you start to mention that word, it's like it's a turnoff for people, and that's one of the reasons why in B1G1, for example, we never mention that word. It's one of the reasons why we talk about projects. It's one of the reasons, and here's the key to it, getting back to one of your questions. It's, this is not, it's changed. So this is not about someone saying, look at that, we just gave $10,000 or, whatever the number was, to fix some problem. it is as simple as the well, as simple as an email that I got, not that today, from someone on the bottom of their email. It says, sent from my iPhone, and every time I send an email, a child gets access to a learning program that changes their life.
Wow.
It's that simple, right? So the question there is really about articulation, and I would suggest that, well, I know that I spend a fair bit of every day trying to figure out for the people that are part of B1G1, what is the best way to articulate this so that you become attractive, bearing in mind, or even more attractive, bearing in mind what we've spoken about in relation to the way in which you articulate the why, through this thing. By the way, Siraj, if anybody wanted to try that and send me their MP3, right, when they did that, I'd love to help them with it.
Brilliant. Yeah. What I'm going to do is post this call. I'm going to share what Paul's link is on GeniusU as well, and what he's doing on GeniusU. So you could just connect with him up over there too, and send him messages, and just get any valuable insights that you can in addition to this call. Just coming on to the next question, which is from Mark, which is, I have been in the when we lose our why, we lose our way situation, midlife challenge. As a creator, I figured out my why is adventure and innovation. Tips for creators and typical whys.
Well, the big tip for creators is don't go changing it every day. That's the big tip for creators. Now, interestingly, that's where things like the purpose test, it might be very interesting. Finding something and then making sure that everything, asking the question, right? Always asking the question as a creator. Okay, is what I'm about to do in line with my purpose? If it's not, don't do it. Simple as that. So it doesn't prevent you from having all of these ideas, but what it does do is make sure that someone once said to me, they said, talking about speaking, they said, do you ever get nervous? Like, do you ever get butterflies? And I said, yeah. And they said, great, because you're supposed to get butterflies. And they said, the key is to do something that gets the butterflies flying in formation. Right? So it's exactly the same for purpose. Purpose gets your butterflies flying in formation, and then you can kind of add more butterflies into the stream as you go.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for that, Paul. I'm just going to come on to, and it's great that you added your key action here as well, executing the 20-day plan for myself. That's brilliant, Mark. There's a question from Sean. Paul, what would you suggest as a strategy to keep your passion for your purpose going whilst you're still being involved in a business that pays the bills, but for which your energy has run out? Wow.
Well,
yeah. So here's the question.
I see the question, but still being involved in a business, but the passion or the purpose is not. Well, the answer is, and Roger's kind of famous thing there is, be Clark Kent. In other words, you go into the phone box kind of thing and find a part of your day where you're following your passion and following your purpose, right? So at least when you get home, in these days, goodness me, how many businesses are starting in bedrooms, okay? And you can do that, and you can be a global business from day one. So my advice there is literally do this, that thing that we talked about, and then find something that is in line with that, and then start doing it. And by the way, the other thing that's interesting on that is, people go, oh, when I'm successful, I'll start giving and stuff like that. My response to that is, what is it that you don't understand that, expressing gratitude and giving is actually central to the journey anyway? So let's not say, oh, in a couple of years' time when I've kind of got made it, then, I'm going to start doing all this stuff. It's central for you to doing it right now. As Seth Godin so wisely said, okay, the challenge is not to be successful. The challenge is to matter, right? and that's it. Because when you've got that purpose, you're mattering to you, and then when you express it, you're finding other people who share that to walk the journey with you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. We got one final question here, which is, hi, Paul. My purpose is quality education, and I will begin the Genius Education certification.
Yes.
I'm also a master trainer in training for the Passion Test for kids and teens. What can be the first thing to do to propose my services to a school?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Belgium, and my mother language is French, and I have learned this certification in English.
Okay, well, let me begin with a French term, voilà, et merci. So hopefully that made sense to Veronique. Veronique, the answer to that question is you don't go to the school and tell them what you do. You go to the school and you tell them that you haven't got it all sorted out necessarily, right?
Yeah.
But you go to the thing and say, this is effectively, I get up every morning to do this, right? The kind of thing that we talked about before. And is working with someone who has that as their primary focus kind of interesting for us to be working together? Yes, it is. Great. Well, let me tell you about what I'm doing. See, the direction there is you don't talk about what you're doing. You don't. You remember this whole thing about your why must be front and center. And so you, Veronique, you are going to find people who believe in your purpose, right? And those are the people that you need to work with. When I'm in large events, I frequently ask people, do any of you have clients, or do any of us have clients that we wish we didn't have, right? And hands go up, right? And so, well, why is that? And it contrast that, right, because you're working with people who don't share the same belief. Contrast that with what Simon said so long ago, and that is that Simon Sinek, that is, the goal is not to work with everyone who might want or need your service or product. The goal is to work only with people who believe what you believe. Now, if that's true, what that means, and it is, what that means is you have a responsibility to articulate that purpose to those people that you want to work with in the school, Veronique. And I'd be very happy to help you do that as well.
Wow, that's valuable over there, Paul. Thanks so much for that. We've got one final question from Josh. He's just come in and added that. How do you know your purpose is true?
Oh, okay. There's a good answer to that. A few years ago, before I had this thing about, I get up every morning to.
Yeah.
So I would say to someone, so why? In fact, we get people to work in pairs and say, okay, Siraj, tell me, what your purpose is, and you would say blah 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 blah, and then I would say, oh really? Why? And then you'd go blah 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 blah, and then I'd say why. I keep nailing you on why. Right now, here's what happens. The first time that happens, Josh, and you might get, a friend to just do that, right? The first time that happens, the second thing that will happen is that the answer to the first, what time you ask why, will be longer, and then it will get longer and longer. And if you listen very carefully, what will happen is if you keep asking it so that people have to delve deeper, it will actually get shorter. And you will see this. When they get to, let's call it the final why, you've asked the final why, you will frequently see, if you watch their Adam's apple, you will frequently see this big swallow. Like, that's when you get it. In other words, that you get it when it really moves you to articulate it.
Yeah, I see that when we do that with our teams, and even sharing it, and every quarter we meet and we talk about our values, our purpose, and why we're doing what we're doing. It just drives the entire team. So while you have that thing at the core of your business, but it just energizes the entire team and your customer base as well, where everyone's on that mission to live that purpose, so you could have that business purpose. Now the key thing is, like, I am more of working in a team where people might have different purposes, but we've got this one thing which is all connected, right? So even though I have my purpose is no poverty, if I was to look at the SDGs or by doing the purpose test, but it is the way I get there through the entrepreneurship route, which is bringing me into this organization.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
Because those of us who have teams, no matter how big or small the team is, one of the things that if you look at all the kind of old management books, they would say, well, you've got to have a mission and a vision.
Mm-hmm.
And those are confusing. I mean, I understand it, but, I like you, get a lot of questions. There's what's the difference between a vision and a mission? Well, don't need to worry about that anymore. Just get the purpose, right? And it'll flow from that now, or largely. Now, what happens is this. Sometimes people say, okay, let's have a meeting to define our purpose. Don't do that. This is you, right? Now, does that mean, right? So the you as the business owner, if you like, as the entrepreneur, it's got to be you. Now, does this mean that everybody has the same purpose? No, right? People can share your purpose, but there's this concept called nested purpose. Okay. So if that makes sense. So let's say we had someone in our team, we don't, but someone in our team who said, well, if we would say to her, Sally, what gets you up out of bed every morning? Sally might say, well, I'm a single mom and I have 3 kids and I come here so that I can get, funds to fund my kids' education so that they can lead the best life that they can. Right? That's cool, right? Now, that's a personal thing, but her personal thing fits in with, this one up here. Does that make sense? So we don't need everybody to sign off on it. It's like, that's you, right? You got it there. Because typically, if you look at the old way of doing this, you would get the board, or the senior leaders, they would sit around and they would say, let's go and have a retreat. By the way, I wish they would say, let's go and have a forward, because a retreat is going backwards. But anyway, so they get in these meetings and then they go, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And then you get that up on the board. And then finally you get this great thing, which has zillions of words on it, which no one can remember, but they know it's important. So they stick it up in the toilets and everywhere. So that when someone goes to the toilet, supposed to read this thing. And then if someone says, well, what's your company all about? Oh, it's something like this, right? That's not it. It's got to be, from here, from you, and then let other people share it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Paul. What I've done is just on the comments, I can see so many comments just coming. I put Paul's Genius account link. So and let me just quickly share my screen as well and just walk through what we've been up to. So let me know when you can see my screen.
I can see my screen. I can see me going into. Yeah, there we go. Got it.
This Paul's Genius account here, which I've just loaded up here. So if you've enjoyed this session, such a powerful 1 hour that we've had, go in, give Paul a testimonial.
Give us a review. Yes, I'm in this game of getting up from number 35. Yes.
So we need to get Paul into the top 10 ranks as soon as possible. It's such a brilliant session that we've had, and you've just come out with this micro degree, which is such great, and it's attracting a lot of people. We haven't really marketed it.
I know that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've already got 64 students enrolled into it, and it's not something which is right in front of a lot of people. We haven't emailed anyone into it, so it's great that to see people are going in and taking this micro degree. So I'm going to paste the link to the micro degree here as well. Do you want to share a bit about this micro degree and what your plans are with B1G1 as well? And I'd like you to share a little bit about the giving plan.
Sure. That's a great idea. So the micro degree, when I was asked to do it, I have to be honest and say I didn't look at the instructions. And I just sat down as it happened at Tau, right? In South Africa,
Mhm.
and I just sat there with a camera and what have you, and I just kind of went, "Mom, this is what it's about." And everybody who saw it went, "Wow, that's so cool," which was a really lovely thing.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's quite different in as much as people tell me that typically with a micro degree you kind of go in like 7-minute segments and things like that. This one doesn't.
Mhm.
It actually suggests to you that you get a nice little beverage right up front like this, and you sit for 45 minutes because that's how important this is, right? It's got to be worth 45 minutes of your time. And then you go through a lot of stuff. There's stuff on there that you just would not know. And then we show you how to articulate all of this stuff and link it very nicely, I think, into B1G1. And
Mhm.
then right down the end, because as we know, the idea here is not to get lots of ideas, it's to actually implement the ideas. And so we give you a couple of steps at the end of the micro degree, one of which is you jump in and you do what's called a giving plan. And then we work with you on making that giving plan reality and dealing with it. What's really nice about it is that we have a conversation, and so everything kind of gets currently everything gets back to what you want to do and how you want to express this, rather than saying, there's a standard way, this is what you've got to do. So yeah, it was, first of all, it was really lovely to be able to do it, and it's lovely to see the reaction to it and see all the feedback coming in. So highly recommended. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. What I'll do is I'll also put a link to the place where you can get your giving plan,
Mm.
and it's
That'd be great.
yeah, and it's on B1G1 website. It's such a great report that you get on the back of it. I just did mine last week and got all my entire teams on it now as well. So they're all looking at their giving plan, which is brilliant. Brilliant to see that the team's onto it.
Yeah, I think the thing that's really cool about it is, you can getting back to the whole purpose of where we're at now, meaning on this call. And thank you for all the brilliant questions, by the way. Is yeah, it's all about purpose, but the what's interesting is if that just stays with you, it's so the question for me and why I think B1G1 is playing such an important part in this whole movement is that B1G1 becomes an expression of your purpose, because what you're saying is at the heart of every transaction that we do in this business is social impact, or if you like, is purpose, right? And that just, to me, it's just this beautiful link that lets you live your purpose every single moment on every single transaction. I mean, we have companies now that are not setting sales goals, right? They're setting giving goals, which is kind of interesting. It's another way of saying we're kind of setting purpose goals, and they're celebrating those purpose goals.
Yeah.
And so what that means is, everybody's driven by that same purpose and the same meaning and everything else. It connects in a very interesting way.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much, Paul. It's been a great session. I've posted links for everyone. Paul's Genius account, the micro degree. Go and check out the micro degree. It's brilliant. And also the link where you can get a free giving plan as well. Such a brilliant. Thanks, Paul. And I look forward to seeing you soon at one of our events.
Indeed, you will. And if I've got to say, if I was listening to this in the United Kingdom, I would say, Michael Parkinson has you got to watch out for you, Suraj. If I was listening to it in the US, I would say Oprah's got a competitor. You have just been magical at providing a beautiful framework for us to have a really meaningful and purposeful discussion. I'm very grateful to you, everybody.
Cool. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. See you on the next call. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.